Hello there, Medicine Cabinet Muses. This is Tara Aaron again, and I just wanted to do a short in-between tutorial showing you a couple of quick techniques that you can use to continue working on your Smashbook and getting it ready for our lesson on Wednesday. So I'm going to demonstrate found image collaging, glazing, and and also a technique that I call expanding an image. Because, so anyway, I'll get into that in a minute. I have actually gone ahead and finished, well, I brought my cover to the next phase. And as you can see, there's actually a lot of color that I have layered in over the top of the images. And so I've done that using a technique called glazing. Not all paints are suitable for glazing. And I tend to like to use what are called, I believe they're called organic acrylics when I'm doing that. So those are basically sort of more modern pigments. They're very intense in color, but they can also be very transparent. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. Are nickel azo gold, all of the phthalocyanines, so phthalo blue, phthalo turquoise, etc., have this quality, and all the quinacridones, quinacridone crimson, quinacridone magenta, one of my favorites, and for the most part, most yellows are pretty transparent as well. So that's a easier one to get it. You do want to stay away from, say, a Naples yellow, very, very opaque. I think it has a lot of white in the pigment. So, but any colors that are transparent, particularly if you're using a really good paint like Golden, will actually show you this on the bottle. So let me demonstrate. See here, this is the Purell Red. That's pretty transparent. How can you tell? Because you can see this swatch of paint and the black lines showing through it. And you go to the quinacridone magenta, wow, that's really transparent. This is actually one of my very favorite colors for glazing, quinacridone nickel azo gold. And so yeah, those are really good colors for glazing. And now I'm going to show you how I do it. Just going to move the camera down a little bit. And so the first thing you're going to want to know is notice is that it involves a lot of water. And so you can see here I've actually set up a paper to protect, a piece of scrap paper to protect my work surface. And before I do the glazing, though, actually I want to show you the other two things I was talking about, because I want to set the image up for the glaze. Okay, so first of all, if you have ever kept a sketchbook or a diary or whatnot, you can photocopy, or in my case, I've got a lot, and I actually went in, and some of the ones that I didn't really want to keep the whole sketchbook, I went through and I found neat things that I wanted to put into future collages. So I just cut them out, tossed the rest of the sketchbook. Really saves me a lot on space and storage, and gives me some very cool images to work with. So first, I'm going to take those and glue them down on this page. And again, I'm going to be really informal and simple about doing this. And I'm going to first find a glue stick that is not all out of glue. All three of those are pretty bad shape. There we go. All right, so we're going to go. So I've got this, and I'm thinking, doesn't this make a neat crown? I love it. So I'm gonna trim this. A lot of the original lines. don't know. This is fun. Okay, just a doodle. And these bottles want to be in there right now. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece here and I'm going to cut it into a couple of pieces and I'm just going to expand it. And what that does is it takes this image and it opens up space for new information to come through. I really particularly love this technique whenever I'm feeling stuck with something, and it's a great way to make your found images from magazines and whatnot a lot more interesting and compelling. Just cutting along the edge gives you such a fascinating line, generally speaking. And like I said, once you incorporate that into another image, you can get some very neat framing, and you can also get some very fascinating like what comes up in the in-between space can often be very surprising, at least in my experience. Okay, so I'm going to put this one here and this one down here, and maybe I'll reposition these a little bit. Yeah, I really like to use these as framing devices myself. They work particularly well because a lot of times they'll have straight edges on opposing sides, and you can sort of plug them in, and they create really interesting borders for your work. But also notice that while the pieces obviously go together, their relationship to each other has now really shifted. So I'm going to show you that in a second. Stop talking. Good. Focus on my work. For a second. Okay, so now there's this fascinating, great visual border, but there's also this very shifted energy between the two. Do you feel how that space in between them is highly activated with space for inquiry? It's the what if energy. Right. All right, so I've got this nifty, neat collage, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply, so you see I've got the found images from my sketchbooks, I've got the expanded image from the magazine, the puzzle pieces, and I've got a pretty neat composition going on here. Now I'm going to apply a glaze. Okay, so we're going to go back down to eye level here. All right, and bam. Now, I am doing this vertically. You can do it once your book cover is already on. I actually did mine leaning. I put it up on an easel and draped it down with an old yoga mat on the floor. For a glaze, we want the color to move over the surface. So we're going to start with some water. And then I am going to add the phthalo, I mentioned this earlier, the quinacridone nickel azo gold, one of my favorites. So I'm going to use this for my glaze. And it looks like I'm getting a little bit of still. I'm going to use a moppy type brush. I usually use actually what's called a sash brush. Now the difference between these two, this has a much coarser bristle, so it doesn't get soggy wet. It holds a lot of water, but it stays, the bristles themselves stay pretty stiff and workable. This very soft bristle, it's like a makeup brush almost. It's known as a mop. It's a watercolor type brush. You can do it with either. I prefer a hog bristle sash brush myself, and then I'll show you why. And let's see, we got my water over here. All right. Or you can even just do it with a pretty good size. There we go. Just got just a round brush. They work pretty well as well. So I'm gonna, let's see that. That's still pretty wet. So I'm just gonna put some color over the top, and I'm gonna let it. You notice I like that. I like that it's darker over here and fade it out a little bit to this side. I'm going to add some more water and encourage it to drip down a bit. Isn't that beautiful? I just love when that happens. I'm going to go in here with, I mentioned the phthalos are really great for glazing. I'm going to go in with a little phthalo turquoise as well. And so, let's see, maybe I'll bring that in from over here. All right, and I might go turn it and drip it the other way a little bit. And look at these rich colors all of a sudden that we've got happening all over the middle of our painting. You can keep turning it and just letting the colors layer over. And wow, just look at how cool it is. It's almost like the painting is coming to life all on its own. So yeah, enjoy this technique of glazing. And, you know, if you feel like it. And one of the other things that it does is it really helps. I'm going to add one more color in here. Give me a second. I want it to be pretty light in the middle. I think actually maybe I'll just go with a little bit more of the quinacridone, because that is a reasonably transparent and light colored. And I'm just going to add a little bit more water in there. There we go. And a little bit more. There we go. There we go. There we go. That's good. I've got a little bit of white left in the page, but some beautiful colors just flowing down over this page. So, bam. Wow. Okay, so gilding the edges. This is another step that entails quite a bit of water and a spray bottle and whatnot, for me at least. You don't have to do this, but I like to really saturate the book so that the water will sort of seep into the edges of each page. And so for this step, all you're going to do is pick, I would say pick at least 2, maybe 3 colors and paint them over the saturated edges of the book. So let's go in. We're going to spray this down. I'm getting in there pretty heavily with all this. You can use watercolors. I think I'm going to use the same colors that I just used glazing. So again, the quinacridone nickel azo gold. I still have a little bit. I think I need a little bit more for this. And the phthalo turquoise that I was working with. I actually happen to love that color combination. Anyway, and it's feeling good for this. So for this, I really am going to go to a sash brush because I really want to cover a lot of area without a lot of extra work. So I'm going to do this color first. It's by far the lighter of the two, and I do love the golden paints. They're super duper saturated pigment wise, and so they are just, they're well worth the extra money if you can afford them. And then we're going to go in with the turquoise and just spot that in on the pages that were not covered by the quinacridone nickel azo gold. Look how that's just waking the entire book up. And all right, I think a little bit more of the nickel azo gold. There we go. It gets pretty overwhelmed pretty quickly, but there we go. Let's bring it in to some of the turquoise areas. Have that mixing go both ways. There we go. All right, and then I like to add also, and maybe this is just, I like to add a little bit of a bright gold. I have got the Liquitex and Art Basics gold, which are, I just don't exactly remember where they are right at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. It's almost gone, but that's fine. Whoopsie daisy. Get that. Oh my God, look at that shimmer and sheen. It's going to bring just such a nice touch of, and this, I'm just going to brush it lightly. Ooh, got a glob there. That's fine. That is totally fine. Now we're going to have a nice little, actually, bit of gilding on the gilded edges. It brings a nice little, it shows up really, really well against the phthalo turquoise in particular. So there we go. I'm going to let that dry, and I will see you next week at this Wednesday, actually, And you know, another thing I like to do, burnish a little bit of that gold onto the cover sometimes. That can, look at how that shines and just picks it up really easily. So don't be afraid to put that paint in other places while you are getting your journal ready. And okie dokie. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little technique demo and that you will be with us to continue on Wednesday this week with our first resting page in the Medicine Cabinet workshop for Council of Muses Open Studio 2021. See you there.